Welcome, we're back to the large intestine. Week 1 beginning. Last week would be considered week 0 because it's just a prep lecture. And then we go down to slide 13. And the metal element rules these qualities. And think about this is the lung and the large intestine, or the metal element. I'll remind you a number of times. And there's other ways to find out more information. There's some on the slides here and last week. And we'll be going through this a bit over the next coming weeks, is this relationship. So this is the end of a cycle. And so concentration, condensation. You look at this time of year. If you're doing this in another time of the year other than the fall, then it's fine to do it. But just think about the fall if you're doing this online, and how boundaries are some of the things I want to talk about in coming weeks. Is when do we fight and when do we let go? What's worth fighting for? Are we worth fighting through some discomfort? Like I often do when I cleanse, fighting through discomfort, or like my example of the retreat that I dropped out of over this weekend, it wasn't worth fighting for, because the powers that be, if you will, or what wanted to happen through me, if you could understand that, was that it was telling me to let go and not to fight. And it was painful to realize that, because I have a shooter and a warrior in the background that wants to fight through things. And the names of the points on the meridians really kind of speak to the importance of this air element in this time of year that's often called highly vata in Ayurveda, which is air is easily changeable, isn't it? It can shift and change, and wind, little breezes, and so things are with the air element, and things can change a lot in our body. So look at these names, the relationship of structure and distance and depth and dimension, and how this element sort of ascribed to keeping the universe together, and rhythm here. How we breathe. The rate is the inhale equal to the exhale. We're talking about that in a minute. And are our bowels regular? Do we go after meals? Do we have a time of the day where we go regularly? Is there order in our life? And slide 14 goes into check this out. Check out how much you inhale, the length of time it takes you to inhale, the length of time it takes you to exhale, and check out those attributes there. If you were in group, or if you're going to be talking to me in person, then we might go through this, but we don't have time to go really into that because there's so many slides. But one type of these people will have looser bowel movements than the other, and the other type will be more of an empathic, and they'll be more of a sponge. One type has barriers or walls around themselves, and another type is just open to everything. And it's not so absolute. We might have times where we're totally open and times where we're totally closed. So check it out. I'm a dominant exhaler because a part of me really is trying to own being here more and more and be in a body. So one of the things I'm working on is really emphasizing my inhale more, letting my exhale truly let go. Slide 15, some questions there to think about. Again, what I'm going to spend a little bit of time, just a moment, talking about is my improv group. It's an adult sort of real play. Her name's Julie Oak, and after a number of years in this group, I love to hear her talking about, feel yourself in your own skin, and then feel your skin expand to the container that we're in, or the people that are in the room. Or like right now, I'm sitting in an empty room in my house, and I have a white background. If you'll notice, I chose that on purpose because white is the color of the metal element, and it's about letting go and squeezing, and letting things fly out, so we're at the pure container of what we are. And so the expansion of this skin is, how can we feel others? How can we feel our environment? Smell tells us a lot about that, and are we worried about the future? Are we bonding with our environment? So can we sense our connection? And I know that I can sense my connection, because when I don't, I feel numb and isolated. So this is a big part of this element, things to explore here. Slide 16. So we talk about transmutation of elements. This is a great point to look at. There were men and people that have studied this for longer than you might believe, and a man named Louis Couvrant, who is a very reputable man of science in France, put his credibility on the line to prove that there were men dying in these factories with these hot furnace smelting metals and things. And he discovered that carbon monoxide poisoning is what it was. And how could there be carbon monoxide poisoning when there's no way for carbon monoxide? There was no chance it could have been in the environment. And he discovered that what was happening was a lot of nitrogen's in the air, and when it gets overheated in these hot furnaces, it transmutes to or changes to C and O, carbon and oxygen, and then they bind tightly together because the two are very attracted to each other. And it's just an important point there to realize that in our gut, bacteria will change like minerals to other minerals, elements to other elements. That's what we're talking about here, and that we need to start viewing life in a different perspective and talk about being open in the earlier slides, like slide 2 or 3. Just being open to things that we didn't understand and can't control. And this is one of those. And there's worms in transmutation. So we have little worms in our gut, little bacteria, little worms, and they eat soil waste. So an interesting point here, I'm going to look it up in my book, that worms, I believe, eat 3 tons of earth. A compost worm will eat 3 tons of earth per year. That's a pretty amazing thing right there, if you think about it. 3 tons. So that's a lot of, and they're transmuting it. That's why worm castings is used a lot in gardening. I use it a lot because it's just full of nutrients, and they're taking waste and they're converting it to something useful, just like we want in our belly. I'm going to look through something in my book here about aromatherapy, and we really want to make sure that we understand that. And we put in essential oils are another great part of change, because carbon, the chosen ones, the author of this essential oils book I'm working with talks about the chosen ones, and it's an acronym: carbon, C, hydrogen, H, oxygen, O, sulfur, S, and N for nitrogen. And that's the majority of what makes up all the elements in nature and in our body. And so when we put essential oils in our bodies, it's a different combination of rings and chains and lines and particles and things that are just different shapes and sizes and formations of those Legos, if you will, the chosen Legos. And so nature's wisdom it's about shape and structure and frequencies, and we can do a lot of good by just getting more oils in our body and more essential oils in our body and more good smelling things and things that are from nature's wisdom, not from a man-made. And this is an example. Benzoic acid was made in an experiment with benzoic acid. Sorry, I want to find this page here. And he discovered that guy Hoshka, who is very famous for body care products, he was an alchemist in his own right, and there was 2 starts of a process. One type of benzoic acid was from nature, and another one was out of a lab, and they were chemically indistinguishable. But I'm going to quote here from page 705, the Chemistry of Essential Oils. Hoshka concluded that synthetic derivatives cannot be etherealized by rhythmic potentization. Quote, they have forfeited all relationship to cosmic and terrestrial rhythms, he says. Another quote, a basic biological difference between natural and synthetic products despite their chemical identity, he concludes. And so one type of benzoic acid was synthesized from coal tar, and another time was from a natural plant source. And he got no healing. He made 2 homeopathic preparations, and the one from natural benzoic acid had, quote, all the desirable healing properties of a homeopath would expect, while the other made from synthetic benzoic acid had no healing properties. Hoshka goes on to say, page 706, the 2 benzoic acids are offspring of 2 realms. These realms are governed by different laws. The living plant belongs, with its whole spectrum of substances, to the realm governed by the laws of life. Keyword, there's laws of life. In the second realm, the laws of physical, atomic, and molecular chemistry prevail. In one case, we are dealing with organisms, in the other with mechanisms. Hence, the laws of matter are entirely valid in the mechanical realm, but not in the organic. So that's the takeaway here, is that stop putting synthetic things in your body, on your body. And I know that, like I mentioned earlier, about I don't put stuff in my body that I don't know it's a food or a natural source. We're going to move on to slide 17 now. Basically, it's another thing about chewing, and we need to annihilate our food. This is out of Tom Cowan's book, Fourfold Path to Healing. I had some reminders from that book. So we have a choice to chew or not to chew, and so these are some of the things we need. We need high quality amino acids, and I have high quality there outlined because it's so important to have enough raw protein in our diet, and that's how we rebuild ourselves. Slide 18. This is the cross section of all the villi in the large intestine. You know, these forests of villi, and then if you slice them across, this is what we're looking at, and just the sheer complexity of that is amazing. That's what that's offered right there. Slide 19. I'll get into just a couple of things about this week, starting off tomorrow for some, or today for others. Buy some oil for oil pulling. You can use sesame or coconut, and we're going to send that out to you if you're interested. It's a good part of lubrication. It's the accelerate detoxification, loosen stuck matter, moisten, improve digestive qi. There's this is already given out to you. A good fruit to focus on would be pineapple and prunes this week. Melons are good if it's still hot in your climate. If you're in a different time of the year, then you're going to have something else. And then at the bottom there in bold, those are the special foods. We're doing raw green onions and chives this week, raw carrots, basil if you can still get it. You can use the hothouse if you really have to. There's raw tomatoes in season in the fall. If you're doing this on another time other than the cleanse, and you might need to supplement some more with other foods, and that's where you'll contact me. But these are pretty much widely available in the United States. And then there's some good tea options there, and then there's some seed chews. So we're going to be giving out black cumin seeds today at the class, and that will be something that you'll have to do on your own if you're just doing this cleanse. But get yourself some seed chews, and don't underestimate the power of herbs. It looks like we will have to do a part 3 for this. Let's see if we can get through this. Yes, let's move on to slide 20 in part 3 here.